Right, we are live. Hello, and welcome to CEMB's another monthly meetup, hosted by me, Ali Malik. And today I'm joined by a dear friend, Halima Salat. Halima is a Kenyan Somali ex-Muslim who describes herself as a rebel, a free thinker, and an atheist. Triad, guaranteed freedom. Halima, welcome. Thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. I've been meaning to do this. It's so great to be here.
Thank you. Right, the topic for today is growing up in Islam and raising kids without Islam. So what I wanted to do is create a picture of a typical childhood under Islam, even though like me and you, we come from vastly different geographical locations. I'm from Asia and Pakistan, you from Africa in Kenya and Somalia. I just wanted to see if there is any commonalities, like we grow up in Islam, if there's any commonalities, and then from there we build up a picture of your life within Islam, and then probably talking about parenting and how parenting, like raising your kids without religion, is different from your own experience from growing up in Islam, in a religion like Islam. So if I can ask you to build a picture for us of your childhood and how big of a role Islam played in your childhood.
Yeah. First, before I paint the picture of my childhood, I want to go to the question you asked about commonalities. Yeah. And that is such a, despite the geography of cultures, yeah, and the way sometimes culture is mixed up with religion, the core aspects are Islam. It's in the text, it's in the Quran, it's in the Hadith, about how to raise your children, how to teach your child to start praying at 7, and the hijab, and that the parenting style is basically set in the text. So the commonality commonality there is basically the how Muslim parents are told this is how you should raise your kids.
Completely, and even like what I say is our religion was chosen for us before our birth. Like before we were born, they knew this kid is going to be a Muslim, and at birth they recite Shahada and Azan in our ears. And if you're a man, all around the Islamic world, if you're a man, you're circumcised and you are a Muslim at birth. And then indoctrination starts from there on. Like parents take pride in if your first words out of a children's mouth is Allah, not mama or papa or whatever the word is. So Islam starts from right at birth. So what was your first experience with Islam? When were you?
Oh, wow. I feel like it's such a long story, and I probably maybe put it in the book, but in a book. There's no the book yet, but in a book.
We'll be waiting for it. If you do write, it's gonna be such a good book.
I am. I'm kind of. It's kind of slow, but I'm kind of writing.
Oh, that's exclusive then. People wait for Halima's book. Yeah.
Okay. So the thing is, the story is long, and so I'm gonna try and just touch the snippets of what were the most profound memories, if I may say. Yes, first of all, where I come from, there's a very common way to go to read Quran, and it's called Duksi. And Duksi basically is a place where like there's a ma'alim, a teacher, and all the kids are going there, and they have to do is read and write and become hafiz, read, write, and memorize the Quran. And Duksi for me was a battle. I hated it.
Right.
Is it like my earliest memory. It's a little bit different from madrasa, but because depending, like in some regions now, when people have moved to the West, they will do the Duksi like in a house, and there'll be little notebooks. But where I grew up, because I grew up in a very small village, we would go into a little shack with made out of wood and shrubs, and we would be writing it on a wooden board
Wow.
And yeah, so it was quite a profound memory for me. And I, in hindsight, is when now I realize how much I hated it.
Right.
Yeah, in hindsight, I really hated it. I excelled academically in school, but I couldn't really grasp the Hafiz thing. It was torture for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where I'm like in Pakistan, they actually teach you can either go for Nazra or Hifiz. Nazra means you start learning Quran by like you start reading it by looking at it, and that's how you take the Quran in. And then Hifiz is when you try and memorize it by heart. Did you try to do Hifiz when you try and
Yes.
memorize it by heart?
Yes.
Right.
And the all around me, the pressure to actually memorize it and to even reach halfway
Yeah,
was so much, you know.
I can
And
understand.
I remember my brother was a Hafiz. I think by the time he was 10 or some 10, 11, I can't really remember the exact age, but he was quite young. Um, I remember that hijab was literally a parenting thing instilled on you. Like
Yeah,
it's a discipline thing from the time, like if you drop it, it's a bad thing, like you've disobeyed.
completely.
um so growing up with all these things,
Yeah.
as an adult later on when I had my kids, which was I literally had my kids after the whole doubt. I know I don't believe a lot of things, but I haven't really
Yeah.
pronounced, is when I had when I got pregnant with my daughter. And when my daughter was born, my family's reaction being that, because my I didn't marry a Muslim man.
Right. Yeah, and you were still Muslim back then.
Yeah, I was in. The thing is, for me, it meant it happened in so many stages, but majority of the decisions I made later on in life, I would say, would just have started from my mid 20s to my late 20s.
Right.
And that's the time now I decided I'm gonna take a completely different path. Even like before I had kids, I didn't want my kids to grow up the way I grew up in.
Okay.
And
Was there anything in particular that made you feel like that, or that made you like deviate from one path that was set for you and try and choose that for yourself?
a lot. For example, I knew I didn't want any daughter of mine to go undergo any sort of FGM,
Completely. Yes.
as well as my son. I didn't want
Yes.
that as well.
Yes.
And that was one thing that was really there with me even through my teenage, even before you're dreaming about if you're having kids or whatever. It's like, if I ever have a kid one day,
Hmm.
my kid isn't gonna
Yeah.
be, you know,
Yeah,
going down that
completely.
road.
And you come from a community where FGM was happening around you. I remember the story where you tried to save this little girl from FGM. Could you tell that story to us just to paint a picture
Oh,
of society? How
yeah,
did you,
I
did
was
you
in
feel like it?
college. Yeah, the thing is, this story, as much as I do talk about it, it's also a very difficult story for me
I understand that.
because the child that I tried to save, first of all, was only 4 years old,
Wow.
and at 4 years old, the decision had already been made, and I attempted by sort of just living with a child and taking her out of that place
Hmm.
and staying away. And back then, actually, we didn't even have there's no one calling you on a cell phone to tell you.
Hmm.
Well, cell phones were there, but they were few and rare. So I didn't have that kind of thing, and so I just took her. But why it haunts me and it's difficult for me to talk about it is the fact that in the end I really couldn't save her, because a couple of days later it happened to her.
Yeah.
So it was all in vain. So it's one of those stories that really bug me up to now at 39. I don't know why.
I can imagine. But you tried. You did your
I
part.
know, I know, I
But
know. I don't know
how,
why it bugs me so much.
I can imagine because yeah, it can feel like that. But did that? how did that change you as a person? What was the thing that...
I remember then when, of course, I went through a very emotional roller coaster with myself. But also, it's immediately after I tried to save this child that, my family performed ruqya on me, so they were convinced that I was suffering some form of jinn and demons, and I remember that. Of course, I went through the emotional turmoils with that, but I remember profoundly saying to myself, "Your child is never gonna go down that road, and you can make a decision about your child."
Yes, completely. So if I ask you to summarize a kid that's growing up in a
Yeah.
typical Islamic household, if I ask you to summarize that from your childhood or from the stories you've heard, from the society you're from, what do you think are the liberating side of the childhood or oppressive side of the childhood? How do you analyze that kid growing up in Islam?
The thing is, I'm gonna be honest, there's nothing liberating. And also, I'm a boy child and a girl child growing up in Islam, they can be different. So a boy child can even have some sort of freedom to just be a child and play and run around and do stuff. A girl child, on the other hand, is treated from the time, even when she's really small, and it's that she can't really just be a kid and play and jump and climb trees or whatever. And that for me is what really it even when I see sometimes other children, of course it's not my place. Everybody has their way of their own way of parenting. Obviously, you don't say things. But when I see children in hijab, for example, it's just an 8-year-old or 7-year-old. It's one of those things that you just think like their childhood is just going away. They can't just be kids.
Yes, completely. And you growing up a woman, how was your childhood different from your male counterparts in your society?
Oh, I'm gonna talk about that. Even the things that planted the seeds of doubt in my head was questioning, how come my brother gets away with that and I don't? How come my brother is he's treated differently from me? How come my brother isn't asked to do this and this and that, and he isn't followed and he isn't watched closely? How come, so when I was growing up, I always felt like the boys were better. They had more, they had privileges that I didn't have as a girl.
Yeah.
And I come from a big family, so there were lots of girls as well. So there were many, but the boys were getting all this preferential treatment, and but at the same time, now later on, also when you grow and you see the bigger picture, also men have it tough. Boys and men have it tough in Islam, with the whole, the belief and how you're supposed to carry yourself and all of these things. So
but
I hope that answers the question.
Comparatively, women do get the worst end of the stick because men, sure, their curiosity is taken away from them. They're told they can't question this ideology. The absolutism of Islam is imposed on them right from early on, and then at 7 they're forced into praying, and they spend hours every day reading about Quran and this and that. But for women, for girls, it's actually more worse because after they reach a certain age of 7 or 8, they are told to cover up. They put in hijab, and they're going out is barred. They're playing with their boys outside is not allowed.
Even going to school. I mean, you're going to school, and if your brother's late from school, you there's not much a bigger deal and or fast. But if you're late from school, and Because for example, like me, and I used to like extracurricular activities of school. It was my happy place. I used to go do choirs and dramas and these kind of things, but only in the school environment. But sometimes maybe we would have like after school to just practice for the next competition or whatnot. And this is when I was expected to attend Duksi and Madrasa, and I remember I used to skip those things. I hated it. I just didn't like it.
And at what age did that start? Duksi, going to Duksi. What age were you asked to go into?
Oh man, even before my memory started forming, because because you go as early as 4 or 3, I think 3 or 4, because when I really dig deep into my really early childhood memories, I mean, from the time they started, that Duksi thing was there. So I think.
And that's every day. You have to go there every day.
Yeah. I mean, it's you have to cram and memorize the 114 chapters. And
I mean, of course, that's a big ask, and that's besides your schooling. Because in Pakistan,
that's besides schooling. Because you see, in Kenya, because where I grew up, the school system is regular. Like the curriculum is the curriculum is 8 years of primary, 4 years of secondary school, and 4 years of university, whatever.
Okay.
But you in the region I lived in, predominantly Somali community, predominantly 98%, even I would say, Muslim. The norm is even the school things are kind of changed for the community. For example, there wouldn't be hijab in the rest of Kenya, but there'd be hijab in this area as part of school uniform. You know what I mean? Like, so in a way, it's also like living in an Islamic country in that region.
Yeah. And was there Islamic subjects in your school as well? Or
yes, IRE. Yeah, we did Islamic religious education, and it was part of the curriculum. And but at least the entire curriculum wasn't based on the entire regular school curriculum wasn't based on Islamic studies. However, as parents in this kind of region, you have the Duksi, you have Madrasa, you have all of these things that you have to go to besides school.
Besides school, and then there is, of course, praying the day. So, I mean, on average, you spend at least a couple of hours besides school on learning Islam.
Yeah.
There is Duksi, there is Madrasa, Quran, just talking about Islam as well at home. Like,
your entire life is Islam. Your day-to-day is Islam. There's no escaping it. The only escapism would be maybe if you're watching cartoons for a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
But where I also grew up, I didn't grow up with that kind of privileges where you can watch cartoons or whatever. Just later on in life, like I would see the kids in when I moved now to the city, then you'd see kids from my community could be watching cartoons or whatever. But for me, that wasn't there.
Wow. Okay. So that's your childhood. So you mentioned like from 16 onwards, you started having those doubts.
10 actually.
10. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were a curious kid. Did you feel like religion being imposed in you in this severe capacity was damaging your curiosity?
Yeah.
Did you feel like it was your way of hitting back at an oppressive force, though?
The thing is, I do think that I always felt different. You can't sometimes verbalize if you're different or if you feel different.
Right.
So I remember I always felt different. I was very I didn't like doing the things that the other kids would be doing like that. That like I didn't enjoy Islamic studies. I didn't like praying. I was always that troublemaker who has to be forced and asked, and force was used constantly on me because I was quite rebellious about it.
Oh, you were a normal child, just asking questions. Just
Yeah.
wanted to play, have some time beyond this.
Yeah, but the thing is, what happens is, if you're this a curious, normal child in these circumstances, and you're not towing the line, then basically your trouble and your there's going to be a lot of conflict and friction in your childhood. So I did have a lot of conflict and friction about it.
Yes, of course. If you know on that straight and narrow that's been defined for you, yes, there is
Yeah.
going to be repercussions for that. Let's get in a bit to your adulthood now, like the doubt
Yeah.
and how did you actually come to realization about Islam, or just questioning the what was the aspects of Islam that made you question its
Slavery,
truth?
women's rights. If I list, I think we would just go on until, I don't know, the hour is over. But basically, I didn't like what was in the Quran. You know, I read the Quran later. Okay, forget this part when I'm rebelling against it when I'm a child. But I did later on in my past teenage, almost early 20s. I really wanted to put effort into Islam. I even wore the hijab really strictly. I really wanted to learn. I studied it. I looked for translations. I really wanted. I realized that I don't like it. My childhood was right. Like I was right, not liking it.
Yeah.
But the decisions later was more now of an intellectual level rather than just rebelling against certain things. And so I decided that this isn't for me. I don't want to believe, but also I couldn't say I don't. I couldn't voice with anyone. I couldn't discuss it with anyone.
Yes. Yeah, that's one aspect of living Islam that's not discussed as much. Like I've talked about in my journey that it took me 4 years from me losing Islam, because I don't know when I left it. So I don't know when I left it. I lost it in about 2012, but until 2016, I didn't meet another ex-Muslim in my life. I didn't verbalize it. I didn't tell anybody that I'd lost it. I was going through the struggle myself. Did you feel something similar where you found it
Yes.
really?
Look, I think the actual time I actually came to a conclusion that I don't believe in all of it, as scary as it was, even saying it loud to myself, was when I was 28, 22, heading 29. So my daughter has just been born. She's kind of like newbornish, almost going 5 months. And I remember that I did make the conclusion. Now I don't. Oh my gosh! I think I'm an atheist. You know.
Right.
But I remember I stuck with this until 2009 and 2019 when I came out of the Bali next to Mariam Namazia. That's when I came out publicly. Even 3 years after I moved to the Netherlands, I still stayed in the closet. But
Yeah.
I was in the closet 6 years before that.
Wow. I guess that relates back to our childhood as well, because the only form of acceptance that we see from our elders or from the community is Islam. How good you are at Islam. That means that brings more praise, the acknowledgement, the acceptance. But once you've lost it, even if you've grown up, you don't know how you're gonna be received. You don't know what effects it can have. Like our relationships can break down. It's
I
a
mean,
scary thing.
the thing is, even I hear this often, even from ex-Muslims who have supportive families, that even the conversations are very uncomfortable. The conversations are very it's like treading on eggshells. Even like the ones who have the most loving, supportive families, that subject of leaving Islam is still such a sore subject, even in the most progressive, moderate Muslim family. But you also have to know that there are countries that where the state is killing people for just not believing in Islam. What makes Islam so fragile that it needs to be protected?
It needs to be because Muhammad said so, right?
Yeah, but it hurts a lot of people. I mean, a lot of young people are living in constant fear, watching over their shoulders if they'll be found out what they do online.
Yes, completely. And that's why people like us who are in the West, who feel like they can speak out and be safe, that's why we need to speak out, because we see voices in our communities who cannot be out in the open, who cannot live their authentic self, because the whole community is going to stand against them. And it's not just about rejection. There is real threat of violence, extremely real threat of violence that they can face. That's why we need to speak up. Anyways, we are going off topic. Like
Yeah, I
every
know, a
time
little bit.
every time you and me speak, we just go
Yeah,
on a
I know,
tangent.
it's okay.
So yeah, again, in your adulthood, you mentioned you went back to Islam for a bit, and then there was intellectual discussion, like questions within you, and that made you leave Islam. So let's come to the part where you've had children. Now you've admitted to yourself as an atheist. You're an atheist. Was there any decisions that you made uh, that you're gonna provide your children a different kind of childhood that from your own?
It's a constant self-awareness. You know, sometimes, because also we as much as, you know, I've worked on myself as a person, I've worked on my traumas and all of that kind of person. There's always the subconscious that you think that if I mess up, because I don't have reference, if I mess up with my children, I'm going to repeat their circle. So it's a constant awareness to keep breaking that circle. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It does completely.
Yeah, so for me, I keep looking at how, of course, and you read, and I seek a lot of help and guidance, and I read a lot of books and parenting books. And but then again, you know, you wing it, and you love your children, and you show them that, you know, but you sometimes I do this, I look at my kids and I'm like, damn, they have no idea. And it's freeing, you know, it's so liberating to know that your kids have no idea where you, I mean, they have no reference to your childhood. So it feels good for me. I'm not saying I'm the best parent in the world, of course nobody is, but I do my best to constantly, you know, steer my children in a different direction than the way I was raised. Of course, just let them be kids, be curious, find out, show them love, guide them. That's it. It's not that hard.
Is it not?
Well, it's kind of hard, but well, it's doable, really. I mean, and I find joy in that. You know, I find a lot of joy and a lot of healing in that.
Yeah.
A lot of joy and a lot of healing in that.
Yes, completely. And so I'm. Before I ask this question, I want to remind everybody that Halima is going to be answering your questions later, and you can start posting your questions in the comments, and I'll start taking on questions once we're done, maybe 10 more minutes, and then we'll start taking your questions. So you can start posting. So if I ask you to differentiate these two childhoods of one child that's been given a religion at birth and then pushed into learning about religion at 4 or 5, at 7 or 8, they can even face some sort of violence or abuse if they're not picking up on it, versus a child who's given the choices, a child who's educated on different religions even, and then allowed to make their own choices. Can you see the difference?
It's so huge. I mean, it's even in the little things, in critical thinking. I mean, I don't remember having critical thinking at 8, but my son right now has conversations with me, it just, it's so huge. The development of curiosity, the development of how to make choices, and how to weigh what you like or what you don't like, and to make the right decision about something. It's huge. But at least from my perspective and my experience, it's humongous. The difference is like day and night.
Yes, I mean,
I'm sorry,
course,
I'm exaggerating, I think.
no, I think you are right, because I've had a childhood, even though my childhood was mostly, I have good memories of it, but there is the aspect of expressing any question, expressing of especially when it comes to religion, expressing any doubt coming your way, because there is that sentence there. If you do get a doubt, because it's human mind, you are going to pick up on some things, because there is so many absurdities in Islam,
Yeah,
that even children's mind is going to say, oh, I'm confused here. And they just say it's shaitan, it's Satan. So right from that moment, the notion of curiosity, the notion of doubt is connected to shaitan, is connected
exactly,
to Satan.
exactly.
And that's very systematically suppressing any
Reinforced, yeah.
form. Yeah. And now kids not having that, it just allows them to think. And as Neil deGrasse Tyson says, children are the best scientists we have today, because they ask, they want to learn, they ask the question. And we, as long as we're not taking that away from them, I think, yeah, it's good. And these kids are going to be better than our childhood, because we didn't have that
But
normality of question.
I also wish for all children everywhere, even the ones who are growing up in in an Islamic country or Islamic household or whatever. I just wish for that to be able, for it to be possible, even within, even if somebody is a believer, within the community, within the family, that the child can just not have it in their lives until they're older and they can decide for themselves. So, but yeah, it's not encouraged in Islam to do that. It's encouraged to have Islam as part of your child's life from the time they say gaga.
Uh, yeah, completely. And what are some of the things you think religious parents could be doing different with their child? Like, if you
Hmm.
get into the nitty and gritties of things.
Well, I'm not a parenting advisor, so take this with a pinch of salt. But like I said, what the ideal, I'm an idealist, so the ideal situation for me is if there's no religion in a child's life, in a child's day to day, that
Yeah,
children are not asked to put on hijab, children are not forced to pray, children are not, well, if a teen decides that's what I want to do, that's kind of a little bit of different for me than a 7-year-old child. It's just, I don't know. It's just, I just find it like it. I wouldn't call it bad parenting, but I just find it to be not healthy for children.
yes, completely.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, and people, you can ask your questions. I'll be posing your questions to Halima a bit later on. And Halima, like, do you see, like, the atmosphere, the community, like, because there is another aspect of cultures versus religion. We won't go into that debate, but what atmosphere does that have any impact on the way children are treated, or the way children are raised, in a way? Because
Wait,
you've seen these two atmospheres now, like children in Africa, besides religion, and children
yeah,
in Europe. Do you see what are some of the differences there? Like basic education or education at home has different.
yeah. Yeah, I'll try and tackle that question in two ways. One is like the fact that in from we all have influences of what is in our environments and what we what is a culture and what is the norm in a certain geographical area. But at the same time, religion does play such a kind of a universal role in people's lives, and in some geographic regions, religion is taken so seriously that it is intertwined with the state, and in some geographic areas religion is allowed and it's given freedoms, and it's, you know, but at the same time I don't know, I just, some of the things that I experienced as a child in Africa, in Kenya, in a small village, I see it here in Amsterdam. So sometimes I
Really?
don't know if it's the geography. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't think it's really the geography. I think it's more to do with how people become engrossed and indoctrinated into whatever religion or culture or what they hold really dear as part of their lives. So and for me, I'd like the separation of children and religion if possible.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's very quotable thing, separation of children and religion, like separation of state and religion.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, that's good. And finally, uh, like you've mentioned, like straight having a say in like religion and state being intertwined, and that's having a problem or having an effect on education. What are some of the overall difference things that Islamic societies can change, especially in education, so the children can have a better uh, future, in a sense, or better way of thinking?
Just science-based education, secular-based education, not religious-based education. Because I mean, if you're teaching science and saying that it's Muhammad who split the moon, seriously, that's not science. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it's if I mean, what we know as education, what has been proven, what has been studied by scientists and researchers and this and that, and that models for me are I mean, it's what can maybe help is countries that have uh, Islam as part of everything, from state, education, everything.
Yes, completely. And even then, it's going to take a while for the culture to change. Like in my school, we had one whole lesson on evolution. And because evolution goes directly against Islam, what people would do uh, is make fun of evolution right after the lesson.
Yes.
So
That's,
as soon as the lesson is ended, he'd say the naughtiest kid in the class. He'd say, "Oh, he's the one descended from monkeys, not all of you." So that way,
and that sends such a message, doesn't it, to a child's
completely.
mind?
Yes, it happened in my class, and we thought, okay, we are humans, we are Ashraful Makhlukat, we're the best creation ever. We are descended from monkeys. So children are even at schools, children were just told to make fun of these things because they go against Islam. So this fight, this constant fight of Islam versus science, where anything goes against Islam, uh, in Islamic communities, they're just told to completely disregard it because Islam again gets the last word in that.
Yeah, and that's why I keep on going back, because I mean, education is such an integral part of a child's life, right? So, and that's why I keep going back to that thing of separating children from Islam. Like, I really feel like children shouldn't be any religion, even, you know, any religion. And Islam is doing more. How do I say it?
Harm?
yeah, to kids in the 21st century, and this is something that is based on a book in I don't know 7th century. It's just I don't know. It's one of the things I'm really passionate about when it comes to women and children. And for me, it's like leave children out of it. You know.
Completely, completely. We all should be actually because it's generations. And finally, before I start going towards a question from our audience, is there
Yeah.
any final words on this topic that you'd like to say?
No, I think that's it. I think I'll just attempt to answer the question. I saw one asking me to answer my person. I don't know how you want to do the questions.
Okay.
You go ahead.
The question is, could you describe your personal experience with Rukia?
Oh wow. Okay, I did go into details when I did an interview with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi on secular jihadists. I think I did go into detail. So I just do a bit of a summary, and anybody who's interested can maybe rewatch that video. So basically what had happened was I tried to save this kid from FGM. My family was convinced I had jinn. There was 4 days of imams, and in the Somali community we normally always call them ma'alim. And so ma'alim, the teacher, the imam is called ma'alim. And this ma'alim's coming to the house, and there's a lot of Quran being read, but there was a lot of physical violence from imams to me. Right. In the pretext of it was one of the violent ruqya type. Absolutely. Where they beat you up to make sure that the jinn has to get out of you or something like that.
Beating the jinn out of you.
Yeah, so it was quite a traumatic experience, and it lasted 4 days, and for me that was like the straw. That's when I actually moved out of my family's. Yeah, that's when I moved out of my family's home.
Wow. Didn't your family realize if it's taken 4 days, maybe the ruqya powers aren't that great?
Apparently, I didn't get the memo where I'm supposed to pretend to be speaking in the jinns.
Oh, right.
I didn't get the memo.
Why didn't you do that?
I didn't know. You know, just and in my mind, I was so rebellious. In my mind, I was like, this shit ain't working on me. You guys are wasting your time, you know. But yeah.
But you enjoyed that for 4 days.
Yeah, it was not pleasant. Of course, it wasn't all 4 days violence, but it's like periods of it. Yeah. It was uncomfortable, and there's the whole putting the a Quran. There's some sort of microphone made out of available materials like a toilet paper roll and put it in your ear. Right. And this guy reading it so loudly, breaking your eardrums. It was not pleasant.
Wow, I can imagine. I mean, I've never seen ruqya in my life because
it's horrible. I wouldn't wish it on anyone.
Yeah, and it's just BS as well because it just
it's very bullshit.
Yeah.
Very bullshit. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from Coco Jasmine. Halima, how do you rationalize the concept of loving Muslim as a Muslim? Or loving Muhammad as a Muslim, sorry. And how do you see the kind of love concept now? So the difference when you were a Muslim and loving Muhammad.
Except I never loved Muhammad.
Really?
Not really. I just found the thing is, for me, I had these periods where like I live in my head. So in my head, I felt like he just sounds like one of those historical people who just were wielding swords and that stuff you read on books, right? On fiction books. But I didn't really love him. And I do remember when I was now conflicted and I was asking myself, do I believe or do I not believe? Muhammad was the first one on the list.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And then Islam followed. I guess that's the natural journey as well, because Islam is so much to do with Muhammad. My question was on Muhammad's perfection as well, because if Muhammad's not perfect, his message is not perfect, and if Islam's not perfect, his very basic claim is that it's perfect. And if when you
Also, majority of the things that I had early problems with were all in the hadith. Majority of them were in the hadith. And so for me, Muhammad stood for this, like, a figure that I kind of just was uncomfortable with, but kind of had to, make it part of life. But later on, when I really studied Islam, and I really read a lot of translations, including a lot of hadith books and collections, I just, Muhammad was like, I'm leaving Islam because Muhammad.
Yes, of course. And his personality is hard to digest anyways, right?
Yeah, he married a child, so it's...
Yeah, and as a Muslim, I did choose to look over there for a while.
Did you defend it? Did you go like, but back then they used to... Oh, them apologists.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of do. Yeah. So, and for me, like, I did love Muhammad. I loved Muhammad, like, with all of my heart for some time.
So how did you rationalize the concept of loving Muhammad as a Muslim?
Oh, I loved him unconditionally. Anything that was coming, I was a zealot. Muhammad's love for me was the basis of my Islam. And the first question I had was because he'd had kids without marriage and sexual slaves. And funnily enough, I've talked about it. It was in Masjid al-Nabawi, just like foot away from his house. I was sitting there reading about him, and that's the first place I got to know, okay, he had sexual slaves, women he owned as properties, and had kid from one of them. And I was like, that's strange, because that was directly against his teachings. So yeah, and the rest is history, as they say. And then there was so many things about, and then love, as I see it now, it's completely different, because one, my love for everybody in my life now is for them as people, is not the idea of them. I hate loving the idea of someone. That's how I came to terms with, like, not having my family in my life, because I loved the idea of my family for so long that I didn't even know who they were as people. Then there came a time that, okay, I need to actually sit down and analyze and see them as people, and see what they're contributing to my life, and how is that affecting me. So for me, the difference is in idea of somebody and actually somebody, if that makes any sense.
It makes a lot of sense, but and I also know that it took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that I will never have my family in my life.
Yeah.
And it is a process. It is such a long process. A lot of people are not aware. Sometimes you may say, okay, I was ostracized, but a lot of public ex-Muslims also, sometimes they don't go deep into, like, it's still it is a process. You reach that place. I do believe that I've kind of reached that. I'm still work in progress, but I've reached that place where I know that it is what it is. So it doesn't bother me as much as it used to. It used to bother me before.
I mean, life goes on, right? Along the ways, you meet these new people who actually
become family.
Because they like you the way you are. They don't want you to change so they can love you.
Exactly. So,
yeah, and that just makes you realize, okay, maybe like, I don't need to change for anybody's acceptance, because that's who I am. I'm gonna just do a justice to myself, and I am going to find people who are actually gonna love me for the way I am, and that's what it is.
Exactly.
Okay, Sayyid Istiaq Hussain Shaun. Halima, what's the name of your book, and are you going to do any literature on FGM?
Oh, I'm going to answer the second part. And because, it's just a working title, things can change. Yeah, I will do I will do some literature on FGM. Yes, absolutely.
That's great. And you have, for those who don't know, Halima is a spoken word artist as well, and
So
she has.
they'll have some poems inserted in the book, basically.
Yes, that'd be great. And you already have some spoken words on FGM, which can be found online. If I
Yes.
find the link, I'll add it into description, and so you can get that. And
Yeah.
for your book, you haven't finalized on the name yet, have you?
Well, I mean, it's a working title, and when a book is still being written, it's just being written. So I really don't want to get like saying a title and then things can change. So yeah, not yet. We're not yet there.
Okay, great. I think that's the last one. Some even try to discredit Sahih Hadith, where it is explicitly mentioned that Muhammad married Aisha when she was 9 and consummated the marriage when she was 9.
Oh, that was a comment, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the comment. Yeah, that's the accepted form, like we were told in our childhood. Right, I think we've come to a conclusion now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Halima, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you for sharing your experiences. And if you've got any message.
Before we go, and this is, I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
Oh, no, of course not.
Okay, before we go, I really forgot to say, when I was in Kenya, CMB was the first ex-Muslim thing I found.
Oh, wow.
Yes. I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Mariam was the first ex-Muslim I saw as well.
Yes.
So that skeptic says, thank you, Halima. Thank you, Halima.
Yeah.
Thanks. Right, before we go, I want to tell everybody about the Women's Leaving Islam movie, which was...
Yes, well, awesome.
Halima is a part of that movie as well. There is 6 ex-Muslim women who talk about their journey. There was a sneak preview on Human Rights Day that we did, and the movie is going to be out on World Hijab Day on 1st of February. Please check our events page for more details on that movie. And we do sport groups. CMB does sport groups. The next one is on 4th and 5th. If you want to be part of that, please send us an email to book your space on that. Email us at hello@exmuslim.org.uk, and keep checking our events page for the next events. And if you want to be part of anything, please get in touch. If you want to suggest who should we get on next, please do in the comments or email us. We are always accessible. And come be part of CMB. And Halima, before you go, there is a personal question that I am going to ask you live, so I have a record of that. When are you seeing me next?
Oh my God, you should come! I don't know, ask Mariam, when is she organizing something else? I think we'll with this whole pandemic thing, travels are difficult, but I don't know. I miss you.
So long. Last time I saw you was in Amsterdam.
Yes.
And hopefully we'll have something together again soon, and I get to see you.
Yeah.
I think
I'm looking forward to it.
Great. Thank you, guys. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to end the broadcast. Lima is Teowa. Mariam says, love you both. We love you.
I love you, Mariam.